Assalamu alaikum. This is Tariq Khosa, Director of National Initiative Against Organized Crime and Chief Executive Officer of Center for Governance Research, Pakistan. We are currently carrying out a study on serious and organized crime and are interviewing different experts and stakeholders who deal with serious and organized crimes. Today, we'll be discussing migrant smuggling and human trafficking. And we have with us an outstanding professional, a police officer of repute, Mr. Ashraf Siddiqi, who is Additional Director General of FIA's Migrant Smuggling and Human Trafficking Wing. Ashraf, we welcome you. We will be discussing some of the aspects of serious and organized crimes, while cyber crimes and illicit firearms and drug trafficking are also part of our mandate, but migrant smuggling and human trafficking are big areas of concern. So we would like to talk to you about it, especially now in the context of this trafficking in persons report of US in 2019 that has put Pakistan on watch list, tier 2 watch list. So therefore, we would like to know what are the challenges that you face currently in this area of serious crimes. How have you decided to cope with these challenges? What is your current mandate and priorities? Please start with that, and then we will go on to our team leader, Tariq Pervez, and he will put you some questions, and other team members will also be asking some questions. So Ashraf, over to you for the current mandate that you have, the challenges that you faced in migrant smuggling and human trafficking, especially in the context of TIP and FATF. Over to you, Ashraf, for your introductory remarks.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity today to talk on the subject. I'll be supported by my colleague, Sardar Zahid, both at the same time. And since then, we are working. So as far as I am concerned, I am looking at IBMS, that's the Integrated Border Management System. And then as ADG Immigration, I'm supervising the working in this thing. So a little bit background, sir. And in fact, recently, I would say in last two, prior to that, we didn't have any, I would say, specific law or a specialized law that would tackle this huge task of human smuggling and trafficking in persons. So Pakistan, I think it was a big milestone for us. In 2018, two laws were enacted, and Migrant Smuggling Act of 2018 and Trafficking Law of Act of 2018. And obviously those were new laws, and the Pacto, which was the older available with us, that was revealed as a result of this new law. After enactment, obviously, cannot sit like after the enactment of law. We have to then move ahead, and we have to educate people about this law. This law had a very, I would say, has very good features in the sense that it specifically and then we have penal sections which if committed by more than one person, then we group it as crime sort of thing. So the penalty also doubles in that. So for the field to accept, I know whenever some new things are introduced, it is really difficult for the field to absorb and work on that. So that was one of, I would say, a bigger challenge for us to educate our men on that law of migrant smuggling and human trafficking. Human trafficking law is like for cross-border trafficking, FIA is the mandate, but then for trafficking within the country, the provincial police and then other stakeholder departments, they have the mandate. So we were working on that, and then in the meantime, we also had to frame those rules for those laws. So we fortunately, or we were working on it along with UNODC. I must say that all along UNODC has been with us side by side, and they have in fact contributed a lot in engaging the consultant and then doing the consultative processes. So then those rules were also framed. And then it was really last year, it was a challenge for us to get those rules passed, because when I assumed the desk along with Zahir, so we got those rules through our headquarters. The Director General was kind, and then we pushed the rules through. So finally, in January this year, the cabinet approved those rules. So again, during this period, we were working on the capacity building and educating our men in the field. And this, I would say, in 2020 also, we devised a national action plan along with UNODC. And that national action plan, the main pillars of the national action plan were the legislative and policy formulation, which I spoke earlier, that was continuous, because we got our previous action plan and those are part of that. And then in 2020 also onwards, 5-year plan, we're going to take it. Then another important thing is the capacity building of our men, public awareness and then regional and international cooperation. So these are the main pillars of this national action plan, and we are working on it. I would request Zahir to further give his input on this. Zahir, please.
Thank you very much, sir. Again, I really feel I really feel honored being part of this great team, because it would be a great learning for us as well, and sharing our plans and concerns with appropriate forum, which we hope can support us. Starting from where ADG Saab has left, Trafficking in Person Act, Section 8, as he has highlighted, that provincial police is the focal investigation agency for internal trafficking, and FIA for external. FIA has already been declared as a focal agency for coordinating the efforts on trafficking in person crimes. In that aspect, FIA has taken over the task of sensitizing not only the police being the lead investigation agency, but the rest of the provincial stakeholders on trafficking as well. Provincial police is the one, then it's the labor departments, it's the child bureaus, it's the women welfare centers, it's the shelter homes, and some of the civil society organizations working in the provinces. FIA has done quite a lot capacity building. It's either it's a face-to-face, either it's online. We've been continuously doing sessions since July last year when I took over. And in that capacity building process, we are being supported mainly by the UNODC, and then IOM has also joined us. And we are extensively working on the priorities of the act itself, which means the victim identification, victim assistance, investigation of the cases, prosecution of the cases. So it's a complete list of bullet points, as we can say, that we can share with you. If you allow me a few minutes, Trafficking in Person report that you have just mentioned, that I've been serving with FIA for started in 2006 when Amar Jafri Saab was a project director here. So in different capacities, I've been coming across with this Trafficking in Person report. Last 1 year, we put our heart and soul into the trafficking, preparation of this report to show some improvement in the areas that were highlighted in the last year's report, and proudly I can state that in each and every area, whether it's a policy, whether it's capacity building, whether it's awareness, whether it's federal or provincial funding, each and every aspect, we were on the higher pedestal as compared to the last year. But still, you know and I know what was the result. We've had a meeting with the US State Department officials about 3 days back, and the core of the meeting was that we would keep consulting each other to make this preparation and response on the trafficking in person report more meaningful for both sides. Right now, my observation or concern, you can say, is that we told them as well that trafficking in person report to me seems as just one-sided process. One-sided in the sense that you send us certain questions end of the year, and we consolidate the responses of all those questions into a report,
Zahir,
and we send it.
May I request you, we will go into details, but thank you for initial responses. You have told us about the 2018 laws, and a remarkable achievement, Ashraf, that we have got the rules in place by the government. And another very important feature is that you have a national action plan to 2020. We would like to get that copy. So I would now request Tariq Parvez Saab for starting basically some of the specific questions related to these two areas of migrant smuggling and human trafficking. But so grateful to you, Ashraf and Zahir, for setting the pace and your introductory remarks. Tariq Parvez Saab, over to you for your comments and questions, please.
Thank you, Tariq, and thank you, Ashraf and Zahir, for sparing some time to be with us. We're certainly honored, and it's good to know that professionals like you are there handling this challenge of human smuggling and trafficking in persons. It's really a pleasure to discuss it with you. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, let me compliment you on the fact, as Tariq has already stated, about having a national action plan to deal with this issue of human smuggling and trafficking in person. I have a copy of that, and I'm trying to read it. I just took out a hard copy. Looks like a good document, very comprehensive, and so my compliments for your input into this document. One quick question on this is that you have an action plan, a very elaborate action plan of this. I would suggest to give it some other name of this action plan. Because everybody, when you say national action plan, everybody confuses it with the national action plan for the terrorists. तो अगर आप इसको कर दें कि जी national action strategy policy कुछ कर दें anyway. So the first question is that although I do realize that maybe it's a bit too early to ask you about it, but have you started acting on the implementation plan? And as per the charts attached with it, there were certain goals set for the first 2 quarters of 2021. And to what extent have these goals been achieved? And that is one thing. And second, I just wanted to have a rough idea about the estimate or the extent of human smuggling. How many people were roughly deported back or offloaded from different countries for human smuggling? Number one, just a figure so that I have something in mind. And secondly, do you have any idea how many persons are trafficked per year in Pakistan? I know it's very difficult. I know everything. We don't get data and all that, but just a rough figure if possible. So, and then my third question is that according to the Interpol strategy to deal with this issue. The most important point from their perspective is that we should start by identifying the criminal networks involved in that particular type of organized crime. My question is, has the FIA been able to identify any networks which are involved in this human smuggling or trafficking in persons? If yes, so can you please name 2 or 3 of these groups, where they are based and how do they operate? एक और क्वेश्चन है जो मेरा ख्याल है वो शरूफ पूछेगा, बिकॉज ज्यादा नहीं मैं पूछता अबाउट लॉज. क्या आप लोग, do you people use, is there any provision about the conspiracy of becoming members of an organized crime, or do we still fall back on the provisions of the PPC and CRPC in this regard? मतलब पैक्टा में और ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग और ट्रैफिकिंग इन पर्सन के जो लॉज बनाए हैं उसमें कॉन्स्पिरेसी की स्पेशल प्रोविजंस हैं, या डू we fall back on the major laws provision? So these were some of my questions.
So Ashraf, over to you for the first set of questions. Oh, Ashraf, go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir. It's always a pleasure and honor to work with Sir Tariq Parvez. The last question I'll take first. As I heard earlier also, sir, please go ahead. Sir, Tariq, you were saying something.
कौन सा question? Hello.
Sir, the last question about the laws, you said the conspiracy sections. Are there any specific to this act? Or the one section which I referred to was regarding that of an organization or organized crime, like a person, more than one, if it's involved, then there is enhanced penalty. But as far as the laws you mentioned of the PPC, the conspiracy, I don't think we have a provision for that. And there is another little lacuna left in the law, which was also mentioned in the trafficking in persons report regarding enhancement of the penalty. Zahir, what was that? Could you just help me out on that?
One of the lacuna that they pointed out is that the trafficking in person, it only says that either the person would be imprisonment or fined.
Yeah.
So their concern was that it should not be or fine, it should be both. It should be both. That we have already taken up with the Ministry of Interior.
Next is regarding the Interpol.
Just a minute.
Sir.
Ashraf, can I intervene?
Sir, please.
अच्छा, हाँ Zahir, ये बताइएगा कि imprisonment and fine is okay. Is there any provision for forfeiture of crime proceeds? Forfeiture of the people who are found involved in organized crime?
Sir, isme what we do is we associate the anti-money laundering offences. वो उसमें we have around 28 plus cases, which Sir Ehsan Sadiq's section, that is our economic crime wing, that is monitoring, but we are also monitoring those, but not in this specific law regarding proceeds of crime. I do agree this, we do attach the AMLA sections if we find out.
So what you mean to say is that Anti-Money Laundering Act is a cross-cutting, law which can be applied in such offenses also. That's and FIA is dealing with that, so you can invoke Anti-Money Laundering Act in your networks and those cases. Go ahead, Ashraf. Please address the remaining questions of Tariq Parvez.
As far as the Interpol is concerned, I think a lot needs to be done in this regard. the Interpol, which I have observed as the ADG immigration, because the stop list or the red notices we keep on putting in and taking out. There are other notices, especially the blue notice, which clearly indicates about the modus operandi and all that stuff. That needs to be incorporated. That's a good point, I would say, sir, you have observed. And we definitely will be catering for that in the Interpol, because our, I would say, traffickers or smugglers are based abroad also, and it's an international kind of thing. So we need to utilize that service. As far as you talk about the figures, Zahid, do we have the figures?
Yes, we have figures.
Yeah. Can you read them?
I think if we take little time for the figures, because it's little confusing, so maybe we can take some time and get back on that.
Okay, just give us a rough idea, Ashraf, about the deportees. Which are the 3 top countries from where deportees are coming back, or offloaded or OFDs that you have, detected in recent past? Just give us an idea on that account.
I'll say, sure. Actually, if you talk about deportees, Saudi Arabia is #1. But then there are obviously certain reasons for that, like people going for Hajj, Umrah, and all that stuff, and then staying. But they are also our concern. So Saudi Arabia, UAE, that is. But the more focus we do is on the people who tend to move towards Europe through irregular routes also, and the regular routes also. Yes, sir. In 2019, sir, we received 17,470 devotees from Iran. That was 2019. And then in 2020, around 20,000, 19,395, I would say. So those were the people who crossed the borders. They went to Iran, and obviously they couldn't cross over to Turkey or Europe. So they were stranded in Iran, and then Iranian government, they referred them back to us. Another thing, sir, which is not exactly answer of your question, but I just want to, for the information of the audience, this new law treats I would say, deportees as victims. So as far as the deportees we receive at the airport, we release them immediately. We do know that they have crossed the borders illegally. We check through the system in the IBMS. But what we do is since the laws are new, but we are pursuing vigorously our zonal zones to register inquiries in certain cases. Because obviously every deportee has his own story to tell. When he comes back, he's debriefed or whatever you say, but he tells us a story, find out what people are behind them. So Lahore zone, I don't have the figures exactly, but Lahore zone is spearheading this. We have a very good, I would say, director in Lahore. He is vigorously doing that. So that in Lahore, we have been able to register a lot of inquiries in the new act, and then obviously pursuing it so that those could be converted. As far as deportees being received from Taftan, we are taking action against them just only from Taftan. Rest of the airports, we are treating them as victims. In future, we do plan, because there is a victim reception center which will be handed over in a couple of weeks by the UNODC, that's at Taftan. So then we will be devising a proper mechanism and to see how we can handle them as victims. I would share a recent case that was like last week. Our people were traveling to Dubai, and there were all 11 people who were referred back to us from Dubai Airport. That was very, and then our Deputy Director General was perturbed, we were perturbed. So I went there personally to see what happened. So now we have certain SOPs devised in FIA that at the time of departure, if people are going, they have all their documents intact, they have their show money, and they have their everything. So they may be allowed to go. But then our officers do exercise some kind of, I would say, and then if they see that people are of low profile, and then that those kind of guys are offloaded. So these people were traveling to Kenya, and obviously the route adopted by them was Islamabad, Dubai, and then Istanbul, and then Kenya. So it was kind of that. So they went from Islamabad airport, and obviously at Dubai, since they were grouped together and they were found in a suspicious manner, some of them had gone into their plane also, but their authorities kind of alarms were raised, and then they sent us all back. So then when we interviewed them, so we immediately registered an inquiry. And then I also found out from our data that how many people, let's say in the last 1 year, like this 8 months, have traveled to Kenya. So it was, the number was like from Islamabad, very few, I would say. I won't defend Islamabad because I'm from Islamabad, but there are around 50 something. But it was surprising to see around 1,000 plus people had traveled to Kenya through Karachi. The rest of the ports number was around 100, I would say, from Lahore or what. But so we are also trying to go into certain things, and then trying to dismantle those networks. Because when we interviewed, then out of those 11, there was a guy who we found out was a handler. And handler in that sense that all the other guys pointed that his brother, the chap who was traveling with them, his brother gave them those paper visas, Kenya paper visas at the airport parking lot. And then after interviewing further, we found out that they have people in Istanbul, and then in Italy, their final destination was Italy, and had paid around 200,000 to 400,000 to Kenya, and then somehow find out their way to Libya, and then from Libya go by boat. So this I would give you an idea that how this recent trends are going at the moment from airports.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ashraf. I see Sarup Ejaz's hand raised. Sarup, would you like to ask your question now? Sarup, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I guess what I was going to ask has largely been answered, because, but I just maybe if there's something more to add, because the Pakistani law does make a distinction in line with international law between, so our laws between trafficking and smuggling. So my question was going to be, and I think Ashraf Saab has answered it on the deportation question of how do we look at smuggling in terms of investigation. So where it's not necessarily a victim in international law as opposed to being trafficked against your will. In the case of smuggling, it is an agreement between two people to essentially cross a border illegally. So how do we deal with those? I think it's already been mentioned that in deportations, we let a lot of those people who we arrive back from Saudi Arabia or other places, we let them go. And we only, Ashraf, if my understanding is correctly, only in cases where we think that there is some sort of organized handler do we investigate, or do we investigate all cases of deportation where, I mean, it's not a visa problem, not overstaying or something like that, where it's proved, or where the claim is that somebody crossed a border illegally? Do we investigate, or is there a process to investigate all of those cases, or do we exercise our judgment on the facts of the case to pursue further and look for a handler?
Ji Ashraf, please.
Sir, when they come reports, I'm talking about the airports especially. So we do their departure. If anybody who was deported by, as you just mentioned, overstaying or other stuff, so they immediately go without anything. Those who have departed illegally earlier 6 months, we would refer them to
Sir, communication problem आई है उन्हें मेरा
Hey, Ashraf, we have lost your voice.
sir.
Ashraf, please reconnect.
Yes, sir. I'm back now.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah. Now
जी,
go
जी,
ahead. Go ahead, please.
Sir, explaining those who have crossed the border illegally departures in the earlier for the all PhDs, but after this enactment of law and government received specific instructions from the Minister of Interior also in this regard, that you should treat them as victims, and we had law also. So we filter them at the airport, and those who have crossed the borders illegally, we do register inquiries further on to find nexus if they like some gangs or criminal office. So that's what we do.
Okay.
Sir, I have to take an emergency call from Zahir is with you, sir. I'm here.
Okay, sure. Zahir, when Ashraf comes back, we'll follow it up with him. But Zahir, can you identify when Tariq Parvez Sahab was DG and I was the Additional Director General Immigration, our major challenge was, people going from central Gujranwala, Punjab, and crossing over through Balochistan border and going into Iran and then to Turkey, into Europe. And so therefore, have you been able to recently identify any networks or safe havens within Iran and Turkey, and then to work with these countries to bust these gangs of agents, facilitators, and those who, are involved in this racket? So Zahir, any recent cases in this regard? Please, if you could elaborate. Zahir?
Sir, thank you.
Zahir, reconnect करें. I think there are some technical issues here. मेरा ख्याल में अमार जाफरी साहब, आइंदा हमें आपके बंदे को भिजवाना पड़ेगा जिसका हमने इंटरव्यू करना।
सर मैं पता है क्या मेरी हंसी आ रही थी तारिक परवेज साहब, आप इस कमरे में मैं तकरीबन 10 साल बैठा रहा हूँ जहाँ से बात हो रही है, तो मैं तो बड़े परेशान हूँ। उस वक्त कनेक्शन बड़े अच्छे थे हमारे, 10 साल के बाद होनी चाहिए। सर मैं यही सवाल करने वाला था इनसे, जाएंगे तो यही करेंगे कि अब IBMS पे IBMS प्लस लाना चाहिए मेरा ख्याल है, क्योंकि सर अब तो इमिग्रेशन में आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस इस्तेमाल हो रही है, फेशियल रिकग्निशन इस्तेमाल हो रही हैं, और सर पासपोर्ट को तो आप रखते हैं मशीन पे तो वो सारी मालूमात शुरू हो जाती है। और मजे की बात यह है पासपोर्ट पे वो बार कोड लगने शुरू हो गए हैं ऑलरेडी ना, تو وہ چیزیں تیار ہیں. اب صرف یہ ہے نا کہ ان کو نیکسٹ اسٹیج پہ لے جانا ہے گا, اور سر ہمیں ان کی مدد کرنی چاہیے اس کے اندر. بس یہ ذرا آ جائیں ذرا دوبارہ, یہ میں تو یہی سوال کرنا چاہوں گا. اور سر وہ مدد میں پرو بونو کرنے کو تیار ہوں ان کے, اگر کوئی ان کو مسائل ہے تو وہ کرنے کو, کیونکہ سر اس میں ایئرپورٹ ایک ایسی ریپوزیٹری ہے انفارمیشن کی کہ, اور اتنی وہ ویلیوبل ہے, کون آیا کون گیا کتنا سا اسٹے کیا, اس سے اس کو ہم لنک کریں گے پولیس سسٹم کے ساتھ. کہ جب وہ سر آپ کو یاد ہوگا اس وقت ہم نے آئی بی ایم ایس کی جو تھی نا ہوٹلوں کے ساتھ کنیکشنز کے, وہ کہاں ٹھہرے جا کے, کون سی رینٹیں کار لی. سر اس کے لیے ضروری ہے, آپ کو یاد ہوگا ہم نے کہا تھا پورا ایک سسٹم بنے کہ جب ایک بندہ آیا تو وہ کہاں کہاں گیا, کس کے ہوٹل میں ٹھہرا, اس کے کریڈٹ کارڈ نے کہاں کہاں چارجنگ کی. سر اس کی بہت سا ضرورت ہے, اور میں جب یہ تشریف لے آئے تو میں سے یہی بات کرنا چاہوں گا کہ کسی طریقے سے. اور سر مزے کی بات یہ, آئی بی ایم ایس کے اوریجنل آپ ہی لوگ اپروو کیا تھا, اس میں چیزیں موجود تھیں. اب سر یہ ان سے ڈیفیکلٹ کوشچن کرنا پڑے گا کہ جی وہ کس اسٹیج پہ ہیں, کہ جب آپ ہوٹل کو لنک کریں گے آن لائن, کیونکہ سر باہر کے ملکوں میں تو آپ ایک جگہ چیک ان کریں تو ان کو پورا پتہ ہوتا ہے کس فلائٹ سے آیا ہے, یہ کس رینٹ کار سے یہاں پہنچا ہے, کس نے یہ کیا ہے. تو سر اس چیز کی بڑی سخت ضرورت ہے, مجھے بات سمجھ میں آتی ہے.
گویا کہ آپ پاکستان کو ایک بالکل مکمل سرویلنس اسٹیٹ بنانا چاہتے ہیں.
سر وہ آلریڈی ضروری ہے, سر وہ آلریڈی ہو رہی ہے. سر میں گزارش کروں آپ کو, یقین جان لیں یہ جو آپ نے ایف بی آئی کا جو واقعہ پڑھا ہوگا, اس کے اوپر ہم نے پوری رات کام کیا ہے, آلریڈی ہو رہی ہے وہ. سر آپ یقین کر لیں اس جو ایف بی آئی کا واقعہ ہوا ہے, اس کے اندر باقاعدہ انڈین ہیکرز انوالوڈ ہیں, اور سر وہ گھس گئے ہیں سسٹمز کے اندر. اب اس سے ڈرنے کی ضرورت نہیں, اس کو فیس کرنے کی ضرورت ہے. ابھی میں آج ہی کہیں مجھے کو بتا رہے تھے کہ پی ٹی اے نے کہا ہے کہ سب لوگ اپنا سیکورٹی آڈٹ کرائیں. سر اب یہ مجھے لگتا یہ ہے کہ جو خواب ہم دیکھتے تھے نا یعنی آج سے 10 سال پہلے, اب وہ پورے ہونے شروع ہو گئے ہیں گے. لیکن سر اب جو ہے نا مسئلہ, اس دن آئی ایم تھینک فل اجاز صاحب کی اس میں ہمارے ساتھ بیرمان میں تھے. سر ہم نے کوئی دنیا کے 20 ایکسپرٹ جمع کیے تھے اس ونڈو کے اندر, اور سب وہ سارے پاکستانی ہیں. مزے کی بات یہ ہے اور وہ کرنا چاہتے ہیں کام. صرف خیر کوئی طریقہ ایسا ہو کہ گورنمنٹ ابھی تھوڑی سینسٹیو ہے, وہ ہمیشہ جب ہم تھے تو ہم بھی شاید ہو گئے سینسٹیو, میرا خیال ہے کہ جی باہر کا بندہ نہ کو آئے. سر ان کو ابھی یہ سمجھانے کی ضرورت ہے. وہ میرا خیال ہے آپ بہتر سمجھا سکتے ہیں اپنے پرسنل لیول پہ کہ ہم باہر کے ضرور ہیں اس وقت, لیکن اتنے بھی باہر کے نہیں ہیں, ہم سسٹم میں رہ چکے ہیں. تو خدا نہ خواستہ کوئی ڈسٹرسٹ والی بات نہیں ہوگی. بس سر کوئی طریقہ سوچیں, اور میرا طارق پیر صاحب آپ دونوں مل کے سوچ سکتے ہیں. سر میں تو گورنمنٹ کے اداروں میں کہہ رہا ہوں کہ میں پرو بونو کام کرنے کو تیار ہوں, یعنی میں پیسے, کیونکہ جب پیسے مانگوں گا تو ٹینڈر میں چلے جائیں گے, اور ٹینڈر کا مطلب 2 سال ہوتے ہیں, آپ کو میرے سے بہتر پتا ہوگا. تو میرا خیال ہے اشرف صاحب آگے.
Okay, Ashraf is back. Ashraf, can you hear us? Ashraf, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Not very audible, but yes, sir. I am using my cell phone because our connections have failed, sir.
Sir, can you hear us loud, sir?
Gigi, we can hear you loud and clear now. Go
Sir,
ahead, G.
coming to your question regarding recently busting international gangs of human smugglers and human traffickers, sir, I've got details of 3 very recent cases. These gangs were busted in 2020, end of 2020 and then 2021. One of the gangs, it is located in Greece. Sir, can you hear us?
Gigi, go ahead.
Look, 10 or 11 people of the gang, they are located in Iran, and then 5 of them or 4 of them, they are in Greece, and 4 of them, they are in Pakistan. So the modus operandi is that the Pakistani members of the gang would transport the guy through Iran and then to Greece. One of the victim was kidnapped in Iran by the members of the gangs, and then they called back the family for the ransom. The money was sent in a bank in Quetta. Through that system, the bank was identified, and the Pakistani handler of the gang was arrested. However, the Iranians and the people in Greece, they are not arrested yet. The second gang was, two of the members were located in Pakistan who lured 4 Pakistani girls for a job in UAE, and when they ended up in UAE, they were forced for some immoral activities. They reported the matter to the authorities, and authorities resorted to our link office, and one of the locals in UAE who was an Indian national who was not arrested, but the members of the gang in Pakistan, they were arrested. The case was challaned and the victims were brought back to Pakistan. So there's a third case in which one of the victim was allegedly kidnapped in Greece, and a phone call was made from Greece to pay the amount on to the members of the gang in Pakistan. The Pakistani members of the gangs were arrested once the money was paid to them on Islamabad-Peshawar motorway. They were arrested. The victim was recovered by the Greece police in Greece, and the counterparts in Greece, 2 local Greece guys and 2 Pakistanis who were their colleagues, they were arrested in Greece. So these are the 3 gangs which were operating across the borders.
Thank you very much, Zahir. I think this case studies that we are developing for our work against serious and organized crime are very important. We would appreciate, Zahir, that you email us with permission of your headquarters these details of these 3 cases, which we would like to highlight in the context of modus operandi and transnational aspect of this crime. It's a transnational crime. So therefore, these are very important. Please do email us these 3 cases or any other significant recent ones to see the trends of this organized crime. So I will now go on to Sayyid Ijaz Hussain. Ijaz, do you have any question or any follow-up matter? Zahir, you want to go ahead. Go ahead, Zahir.
Sir, a part of questions that Sir Tariq Parvez had asked, one of the question that I would like to reply that so far the progress in first 2 quarters on the National Action Plan. Firstly, the reply is yes, we have made significant progress in terms of implementing the National Action Plan, and the targets highlighted for the first 2 quarters have been achieved. The process is that FIA identifies the needs for the targets to be set up, and then monthly review meetings are held with the UNODC officials to apprise them of the progress on the National Action Plan. So we have a well-coordinated coordination mechanism with the UNODC. We have not left it one way that UNODC is all about it. We are trying our best effort that FIA as a major recipient of the benefits of the National Action Plan. So we are quite alert to the progress, and we are having constant meetings on that.
Thank you very much. This National Action Plan and its follow-up will be very important part of our study, because this is a national strategy. We are trying to develop a coordinated national strategy for our study. Zahir, this is very important information that you have shared with us. So over to Dr. Ijaz. Ijaz, would you like to ask any question or any comment from your side, please?
Thank you, sir. Yes, I have 2 questions. These are relevant for our strategy making. My first question is,
sir, I'll just, sir, if you can.
Ji Ashraf, go ahead, please.
Sir, if the meeting host can let me, because my laptop is again back, be there, because we can't hear you on cell phone. So,
can you hear us now?
Sir, I'm joining on the laptop, so just give me a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, sir, Ijaz, go on.
Ji.
I'll try to, because the voice is very low. Sir, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Zubair. My questions are relevant to our operational strategies, and for that we need to understand the geographic spread of migrant smuggling and human trafficking in Pakistan. So are there any areas in Pakistan which are especially important for this reason? So many people being going abroad illegally from those areas, and what could be the reason why those areas are having more concentration as compared to the others? Can we understand it? And are there any patterns in time as well, some months or some days of the week or years where this phenomenon was at the highest? So was there any reason for that to understand the whole phenomenon? So these are my two questions about time and space.
Okay, thank you, Ijaz. Ashraf, Ijaz would like to know about more of the hotspots of migrant smuggling and human trafficking, and why are those areas so significant, and also some of the timings or seasons in which this thing particularly intensifies or takes place. So Ashraf, over to you.
Sir, I must compliment Sir Ijaz on this question. He was doing PhD when I was at UPenn. So I know we need to do more statistical analysis as far as Sir Ijaz has observed. But Zahir has some figures, so please, he will.
As far as the geographical areas are concerned, I have data with me. 1,003 deportees, so to speak, from 1,000 from 66 from Mandi Baudi. So we were expecting the question that spots. So we identify a higher number of deportees that we are receiving from abroad. So Gujarat, Gujranwala, and Mandi Baudin are the highest. One. Second, the possible reason, one obvious reason is everywhere that it's poverty and lack of employment opportunities. But I would add to it, I'm sorry if I sound negative, but I would add to it that since the people from these particular provinces are in majority, or maybe there are more people from these particular areas, either in Norway or some other Western countries. So one myth is that since my brother is serving there, so he can assist us with the papers and with the job over there. So this could be the major reason. And second could be that since these are the areas from where traditionally people have been going abroad and settling in, so this is an kind of incentive or a motivational factor for the labor force here, that anywhere who goes to Norway or Germany or is settled easily. So this could be probably inciting people to go and work there. Sir.
Okay. Ijaz, unmute kar lein. Ijaz, unmute, please. Go ahead.
Second question जो था कि कोई ऐसे स्पेसिफिक मंथ्स हैं, कोई सीजन्स हैं जिसमें स्मगलिंग या ट्रैफिकिंग ज्यादा होती है, या it is uniformly distributed over the years?
इसका सर स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड आंसर ये है कि नहीं, ऐसा कोई डाटा या ऐसे कोई ट्रेंड्स अभी तक सामने नहीं आए कि लेट्स से समर में कम हो जाती हो बिकॉज ऑफ हीट और विंटर में ज्यादा चली जाती हो कि रूट में थोड़ा सा कंपैरेटिवली कम गर्मी होगी. सो इट रिमेन्स सेम राउंड
Well, due to COVID, I would say we have observed more people coming back from Iran. Earlier, the trend was that people would cross over from Iran to Turkey, and then from Turkey we would be having people back, loads of planes. So I think due to COVID, that thing has disturbed, and people go to Iran and they are not able to cross over. So they are coming back. And then the air route that is all around the world going on. So people like in trickles, they would be going by air. As I mentioned, the last group of people who came back and then be taking action against them. So that's how it is.
It's a very important point, Ashraf, that you have made. What is the impact of COVID-19 on the issue of migrant smuggling in Pakistan? And international dimension, regional, Iran, you have just pointed out, but we would like to go deeper into this. Try and analyze it for us as to how the COVID-19 situation has impacted overall in the context of this human smuggling. I would now request Javed Akhtar. Now he's in UK, Deputy Chief of West Yorkshire Police, former member of our team and board of National Initiative. Javed, from your perspective, you have in Manchester and those areas where you have served, you found most of Mirpuri or Azad Kashmiri and others. But what is your take on this, Javed, the UK aspect and this area of human smuggling and human trafficking in Pakistan? Javed, over to you.
I think in the context of the UK, it is not so much smuggling, it's people using legitimate or semi-legitimate means to actually gain access into the country. So things like arranged marriages, marriages of convenience, asylum seekers. So people would actually sort of gain access to the country legitimately. I think the point Zahir Saab made about communities being settled in particular areas, in particular countries, and then they attract people from their own villages and towns, I think is very relevant. And you certainly see that in the context of the AJK, the Mirpuri community. Whole families, whole villages actually have settled. And when you look at the pattern of settlement in the UK, it's very much, you can see there'll be people from Islamgarh settled in a particular town in the UK, and even within towns in particular localities. So I think that's very much of a kind of a pull and a push factor. So if people are settled in a particular area, or in Pakistan, people will say, your brother, your cousin is settled in that particular country, you should try and get there. So I think that very much is because of the social support networks are there when people arrive, they're not sort of exposed and vulnerable in the same way as they would be elsewhere. So I think that very much holds true. But from my experience, the smuggling into the UK, Pakistanis were very few in number relatively. It was more the Afghans and other nationalities. But the Pakistanis tended to use, like I said, what I would call legitimate or semi-legitimate routes in. So they would come as visitors and overstay, come as medical kind of sort of cases and then overstay. So that kind of thing. So I think it's very different with different communities, and it changes over time. And that's my comment on that particular issue. I don't know if, sorry, I was away for 20 minutes. I don't know if my two questions were put to Zahir and Ashraf Saab, or do you want me to put them now?
Oh, you can put them now. Javed, go ahead. You can address them, although some of the aspects have been covered, but you go ahead, ask your questions.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of things then. We know with any kind of law enforcement itself is not sufficient. So just wondered what kind of sort of preventative measures were being taken by the FIA, either by itself or in conjunction with other agencies, to reduce the incidence of both human traffic and smuggling. And my second question was, both these types of crime, although they're linked, they are very different in nature. So how does the approaches to tackling those differ by the FIA and the other agencies, and what are the different challenges that they pose?
just to add to Ashraf, what Javed has just said, I was very pleased to see that yesterday Punjab University Institute held a session on human trafficking, and Sardar Zahir was there as one of the participants, of how you were apprising the people generally at large, public awareness about the human trafficking challenges and those issues. So interaction with the community and preventive measures, the Javed's question is answered. But he's raised this very relevant point of dealing with human trafficking distinctly as against migrant smuggling or human smuggling. So how does the FIA distinguish between the two and deal with them? Ashraf, over to you.
Sir, they obviously are distinct, but they do overlap a lot in the sense that when people are they're going on their own will, they are paying, and then it happens that this smuggling then turns or converts into trafficking, what we have observed. So as far as I would say young men are concerned, they are lured away or they go will, and then they are either kidnapped or held hostage in Iran. So then that's migrant smuggling turns into trafficking, I would say, and then kidnapping and other. But then as far as women and children are concerned, yes, obviously that's totally different, I would say, issue, that they are absolutely distinct because those are being trafficked. But again, since the victims, they don't know about that things happening to them. So we are holding capacity building sessions with HTCs, and then our people at the airport also to citizens. Zahid, would you like to add?
So one major area of concern used to be and still is that whenever the word trafficking is uttered somewhere or is flashed somewhere, the first thing that comes to the mind of the people is that, well, it's an FIA subject, so let's not talk about it. What we have done differently is that following the lines of the definition of trafficking in person mentioned in the Act, and then Section 8, which says that police is the main investigation agency, we are on continuous basis sensitizing police on the definition of Trafficking in Person Act and then responsibilities of police under the Act. And we have had sessions at every level, at the RPO levels. We have had sessions with the DPO levels. We've had sessions with the legal branch, investigation branch, police station staff. So we are continuously having sessions with the provincial police, telling them that how trafficking and smuggling are different, one, and secondly, who has the major share of investigation and prosecution in these cases. So in about few months, or so to speak, a year's time, I'm quite confident that situation would be much better when it comes to understanding the difference between the two and how to tackle these crimes by which agency.
Let me add a little bit regarding the preventive measures. One of the measures, if you recall, Supreme Court empowered the FIA, and we then issued multiple SOPs. Like the SOP was that ADG Immigration would be the contact person for all the immigration liaison officers working in Islamabad, and then another SOP is that the people who went abroad and are deported back, on their deportation back, they will be blacklisted for a certain amount of time, like their passports would be blocked. For example, anyone who leaves the country illegally, when he comes back, his passport would be blocked for 2 years. And then those people who are deported, who have jumped visas or who have committed certain crime, so the duration is from 2 years to 6 months. So that is also kind of deterrent. what FIA or we have started doing is that we have started referring those cases for blacklisting them. Earlier, the SOP existed in the books, but nobody was using it at FIA. So now we have got very good coordination with the DG Immigration Passports. The day we send, I think in 48 hours, those people are blacklisted. So then they go to the courts and then they get their names crossed. So I think, so this is also one of the way to take them towards the legal process.
I think, yes, Zahir, go ahead, please.
So one quick, I would say, reinforcement of what I earlier said, that like we have said that under National Action Plan, we are comprehensively undertaking these capacity building programs. So clarifying the responsibilities of the agencies for human trafficking and human smuggling is not just as an additional thing, or we are taking it as one odd things. No, knowing the significance of it, we have had the specific and focused sessions. We've made it part of our strategy that on the one hand, we have to do this. Clarifying difference between trafficking and human smuggling is, you can say, one of the priority areas, because unless the agencies, they do not understand their responsibilities under these two areas, the rest would be little difficult.
Very, very important points made, Ashraf. These SOPs which have been made, if you could like to share with us, because these are very important measures being undertaken at the moment. Your coordination with DG Passport and Immigration and how the follow-up is being done, we would like to highlight in our study. These are very, very important measures. And as Tariq Parvez Sahab said, that why don't you call this as, instead of a national action plan, please call it as a national strategy against human smuggling and trafficking. So it's a national strategy again. Strategy is tactical, operational. It is not, strategic. So it is not a policy. You're not, a policy is given by the government, strategy is made by the department, and FIA is the main executing department. So kindly make it as a national strategy against human smuggling and trafficking. That would be useful. Quickly, I think Javed wants to make a point because we have to conclude in 5 minutes or so. Javed, your point, and then I come to Amar Jafri for his final
Just
question.
very quickly, Ashraf Sahab, you said about the, blacklisting people for 2 years or whatever time period it is under SOPs. Under what legislation is that done, or is that something, a diktat that comes from the FIA? Because it has to have legitimacy for citizens to be actually barred from traveling, etc. So what's the legislative framework under which it's done? Or is it just like, when you say SOP, that to me says it's something that the FIA has.
Thank you, Javed. We will get that answer from Ashraf in a while about this SOP and legitimacy. Tariq Parvez Sahab has to go and leave the meeting early. So Tariq Parvez Sahab, initially your conclusion, some points that as a follow-up, unmute aap kar le, and please make some of the points out of this meeting today, some of the salients, your views, please. Tariq sir.
Tariq, I think it's been a very useful meeting, and we learned a lot of new things, came to know about what FIA was doing, some of the good work which we were not aware of. And I think we'll continue the contact and keep on bothering them. And it's a good starting discussion, initial discussion. And I look forward to continuing more on this after we read something else and come to it. But I thank you very much, Ashraf and Zahir. Very good and very useful meeting. Thank you.
Yes, I fully endorse that. Thank you very much. Actually, Sardar Zahir is our focal person, contact for this study, and it's a very useful thing. Ashraf, thank you for doing that. And you please address this issue of SOPs. Do they have any legal backing or support, as Javed has just pointed out? And then I move to Amar Jafri for his question. Amar, you put your question first, and then Ashraf can address both these issues. Jafri Saab, over to you.
Thank you, my sir. सर एक तो अशरफ साहब आपका और जहीर साहब आपका बहुत शुक्रिया कि आपने मेरा टाइम दिया. मेरी एक दो सेशंस भी होंगे, क्वेश्चन भी होगा. जब ओरिजिनली वी प्लान्ड फॉर IBMS, so we had this extension with the police stations, with the hotels, with everything. So I would like to know that are we working on that? And second is, how can we use artificial intelligence, because it is being globally used for identifying patterns in human trafficking and human smuggling. I must use the word patterns. And the machine recognition is working very fast on these patterns. So this is my question, and then I can make one recommendation also. Please go.
Thank you very much. So Ashraf, he wants to know more about the IBMS upgrade. What are your plans? And address Javed's question also. Ashraf, over to you.
Sir, for IBMS, we are in the middle of PC1. It's a project of 900 million rupees. Last year, we did some procurement of the purpose, I would say, is to revamp all because the IT equipment wears down and loses its life in 3 to 5 years. So our procurement was pretty old. So one of the purpose was to change all the networking systems, all this hardware and everything, then upgrade the software. The software upgradation would we would wanted to introduce biometric features like thumbs and then facial recognition. So that is we are talking with Nadra so that we can have a better biometric system for travelers. As far as MOUs with Punjab Police, with FPR, and with other intel agencies also. So they do on need basis access. We have given them the access through I would say API or programming interface. So we do have, as far as connection with the special branches are concerned, that's more important because they are the ones who track the foreigners on ground. So that we are catering for in the PC1, which is undergoing. As far as artificial intelligence is, I'm not an expert. I think we will request Amar Jafri Saab to help us in this field. The legitimacy regarding the SOPs, I'll just give you a brief background. There was a murder of a young lady in KPK, and then the murderer, he left the country immediately, like in 4 or 5 hours. So the Supreme Court took a notice in Pakistan, and they called FIA Interior Foreign Office, and they said, what's going on? Do you have any mechanism or anything? So then Supreme Committee was headed by, it was like composed DG FIA, Secretary Interior, and Finance Secretary. They all gave a set of recommendations. There were multiple recommendations around, I think 10 or plus. Those recommendations the Supreme Court adopted in its own decision. And they said that these recommendations are plausible and they would benefit. So government should devise mechanism to implement those decisions. So I do agree with Javed Saab that we should have a legal backing, but since it was, we had to do it immediately. So as a result, the most important thing which came was the PNI, which is Provisional National Identification List. Earlier, FIA didn't have any powers to stop anybody, person like who commits a murder, rape, or kidnapping or any heinous crime. So that FIA was given. And then coordination with international agencies, coordination with police liaison officers at the embassy. And then this SOP regarding blacklist. This blacklisting was also referred because that murder case, and then there was another case of I would say driving forces for the Supreme Court to take a decision, and then in the wake of that, the set of SOPs were formed. So that's the legal backing, and so far Nobody has challenged it. But I do agree we should be looking for some solid legislative kind of measures.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashraf. Thank you, Zahir. This has been a very, very informative, very useful session. In
Sir,
fact,
can
our study.
I say a sentence?
जी,
Zahir
जी,
साहब
अमर।
और Ashraf साहब, मैं पहले भी हाजिर हुआ था प्रो बोनो. लेट मी रिपीट अगेन. मेरी आप देखें Ashraf जिस कमरे में बैठे मैं बड़ा सा ये बैठा हूँगा. मेरी बड़ी अटैचमेंट है इस कमरे के साथ. तो मैं इस तमाम लोगों की मौजूदगी में आपको कहता हूँ यूज ऑफ आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस इन इमिग्रेशन, ये मेरा सब्जेक्ट है, इसमें मैं और एरिया में काम कर रहा हूँ. बट दैट वी गोइंग टू क्लिक इट कि आपको पैटर्न पर चल जाएंगे और आपके पास बेहतरीन डाटा मौजूद है, बेहतरीन टीम मौजूद है आपके पास. बस आप एक मीटिंग कॉल करें, जस्ट वन कॉल अवे. बाकी मैं
Thank you, Amar. I know this is a very, very sincere offer, and I'm sure FIA treats you like a team. You have worked in that organization. I am grateful on behalf of the National Initiative Against Organized Crime, to Additional Director General Ashraf Siddiqi, to Director FIA Sardar Zahir, for giving us so much time and interest. We are an independent voice. We are undertaking this study in the better interest of our country, to put the systems better. We will be in support in this national strategy against human smuggling and trafficking. And whatever the recommendations or paper or case studies come up will add value to whatever Pakistan is doing. Pakistan, as you know, is going through a United Nations Transnational Against Organized Crime review this year, 2021 and 2022. Ehsan Sadiq is the focal person for that review, but migrant smuggling and human trafficking are two important protocols of UN which are going to be analyzed. So you have a great role to play, and provinces and provincial police organizations and other departments equally have to play a role in human trafficking. So therefore, we will keep in touch. Thank you for your time, and we would expect Zahir to send us the details of 3 cases that you have pointed out, some of the National Action Plan implementation that has been done so far, and other matters which have been discussed. We will stay in touch, and thank you very much, Ashraf and Zahir, for your time. It has indeed been a great pleasure interacting with both of you. All the best, and Khuda Hafiz.